Echo 5, do you copy? Echo 5.
Echo 2, good morning. Nice of you to drop by.
Feeling alright, sir? Thought we lost you.
Right now, I feel like I can take on this whole podcast myself.
I know what you mean. Ready to send that transmission to Echo Base?
Yes, sir. R10, patch through.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Tonight we are going to be discussing Ahsoka Part 1, but we got a special co-host with us. We would like to welcome her to our team. It's going to be Echo 9, right? Or was it Echo 7? Echo 7. So, Echo 7, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into Star Wars.
Hi. So I have been watching Star Wars ever since I was a kid. My dad was an original series fan, so he took me to the movies in 1998 when it first came out in Phantom Menace. So I'm basically a prequel girl, but I really, really got into it with everything that came out with the animated series and so on. And Ahsoka actually is my favorite character.
So you watched a lot of the Clone Wars?
Yeah, I watched everything.
Oh, very cool.
I don't think I have. I think I watched everything that was available to me as visual media from Star Wars.
So you've seen Rebels as well then, and Resistance, and so you kept up to date with everything.
Yeah.
So you said that you're like beginning in the prequels. Is that like your favorite saga?
Oh, that is a very difficult question to answer. I mean, yeah, I have to because of emotional reasons. You know, it's my first meeting with this entire thing. So, yeah, I have to say that and this is gonna probably not sound so great from me, but actually, Phantom Menace is probably my favorite movie.
No way, that's actually really cool. I know a lot of people when they go into the prequel trilogy, they are looking at Revenge of the Sith being their favorite. I know one of our co-hosts, Echo 3, he actually picked Echo 3 because of his favorite is Episode 3. So I mean, I think that's one thing that I love about Star Wars, and I can't stress enough, especially in this community, is it doesn't matter what you like. Like everybody has their own favorite thing that brought them into Star Wars, and so yours is very unique. I've actually never had anyone say Phantom Menace is their favorite, but I can definitely understand why.
Yeah, well, it was I until I met Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon was my favorite Jedi. When I saw him in in Clone Wars as a Force ghost and in Kenobi, it is incredible to have him back. And Darth Maul is probably one of my favorite villains ever in everything, visual, literature, anything I can imagine, because I don't know, I find his evilness especially so pure. But yeah, I'm sure there will be a bunch of opportunities to go into that, but yeah, that's why Phantom Menace is my favorite movie, because I find both the antagonists and protagonists to be the best in the series in from some aspects.
Very cool. Have you read any of the books, any of the comics, or have you just mainly stuck to the live action stuff? Or
Yeah, that is going to be the embarrassing part for me. I've only stuck to the visual media. Now that I've heard so much that I need to expand that a little bit, but I read books a lot and I thought, okay, maybe I should steer clear of Star Wars, because if I get into that rabbit hole, there's no way coming out.
Yeah, I know people that got into the books and they started with a lot of the Disney stuff, and then they started hearing about Legends. And I know a lot of
Mm.
people that jumped into Legends material. And a lot this girl at work, she recently went to Disney's Disneyland Star Wars Galaxy Edge, and she became a fan because she's like, all right, where do I start in the books? I need to read the books. We need to watch all the movies. And so I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, let's slow it down just a little bit. There's a lot of stuff to get into, even the comics. Like that comics I won't even tackle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just need to look up an order of some kind, like somebody who has read everything and just wrote like, okay, this makes sense for this and that makes sense for that. I mean, especially after watching Ahsoka, after seeing, I mean, Rebels I saw years ago, and I did not know Thrawn was going to be so prominent. I had no idea that all of this was going to turn into something so huge. So
Hmm.
I should definitely read the trilogy of books about Thrawn.
Yeah, I would definitely say do the Legends Heir to the Empire trilogy of Thrawn,
Hmm.
and then come back and do the ones that Disney did, because they brought back the same author to write these ones for Disney. And so I've been hearing they're pretty good and keep true to the characters. So I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do with them. Um, but great to have you on, and we'd love to have you. So let us get started because we are going to be talking about Ahsoka episode 1. Uh, were you excited for the series at all, like going in, or were you kind of like hesitant? I know some people were hesitant because I know there have been some hit or misses, but for me, I was actually really excited for this one.
I was so excited. I mean, I believe Dave Filoni is our savior when it comes to all of this. So, I loved, and as soon as I saw Ahsoka in Mandalorian in live action, I was convinced. There was no questions in my head. And since Dave Filoni is so protective and so loving towards this character, that I thought, okay, anything that he does is going to be good on my books. So
Hmm.
I was extremely excited. I still am. I collected some figures, and I had been waiting for this show's premiere for some time now. I even put some posts on Twitter, and when there was this post of, I think, a year and a half ago or something, and it was Filoni's hat on a director's chair, and on the back it said Ahsoka, and I lost it. That was for me the moment it was happening, and yeah, I remember I lost it.
Yeah, because especially what they're doing, because I know that Dave Filoni and John Favreau are going to be working on a movie, and it's supposed to be tying in the TV shows together. So I feel like Ahsoka was kind of like that stepping stone to do that. And I feel like jumping jumping a little bit ahead, but not giving too many spoilers away for the next episodes. But it seems like the the journey that they're going on and how the season's going to end is going to tie in something into the movie. Because as far as I know, there hasn't been another Mando season announced. Book of Boba, this, they haven't mentioned anything about another Ahsoka. They've only announced like this skeleton crew show, the acolyte, and they've got some other projects that they're working on. So I feel like the next step for Mando and Ahsoka is gonna be the Dave Filoni's movie.
Uh, I mean, I have also been watching Ahsoka as as Kenobi. I thought this was going to be a mini series, and I thought we were just going to have a very neat and tidy arc. But now that we're in episode 6 and I see there are so many questions still to be answered, I guess your theory might be very much the truth, because it feels like this is not going to tidy up neatly at the end of the season. And Mando, when I watched the season 3 finale, I thought there is no way that we are getting another season, because they literally did the Western movie happy ending and so on and so forth. So it might be that might be the case, that we're actually getting a movie, maybe even another trilogy of some kind to put all of these characters together.
Yeah, especially when you jump into the books and you read Heir to the Empire with Thrawn and all that, you'll see that Thrawn is worthy of the the movie screen. So jumping into this episode, what were your initial thoughts on this episode?
I have so many thoughts. I have a lot of um, things that I actually want to talk about from, I mean, I watched the episode again this afternoon, and I made a list frame to frame what I want to talk about and what I really liked. And the first thing that hit me was, before anything else, we got the red Lucasfilm and red Star Wars logo, and we got the helmet sequence where we also had some droids, and they all had this red hue on them. And then we get the text crawl that is it's not like this inclined version, but very straight, all red. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a villain story. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me.
Yeah, and the one thing that my cousin noticed is because, like, when all the helmets, they go through the helmets, and you were talking about, like, they had like the red tint. They showed Sabine's helmet, if I remember correctly, red,
Yeah.
which usually the color that depicts on each character's helmet is supposed to be reflective of their light side or dark side. And so I'm
Hmm.
curious where we're gonna see Sabine towards the end of this series.
Yeah. That is, I mean, all of the helmets, everything, all of the droids. I cannot pronounce
Droids.
them. Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Droids.
Yeah. And all of everything was completely red tinted.
Okay, so it was everything. So it wasn't just Sabine's.
Hmm.
So okay, so this whole series is gonna be a little bit darker than what we're used to, and
Yeah.
so it's really cool that you picked up on that, because from what we've seen, that's kind of where it's going. Um, see, I didn't really focus too much on that because usually my cousin and I will skip like some of that. And then we'll just jump into the show.
Yeah, I can imagine my husband also wants to very much quickly skip all of this, but today I just took my time, took all of my notes. I made frame to frame references and like compare them to the prequels and so on, because there were a lot of shots that were very similar, maybe one to one, the same frame, but with different characters from the prequels and the original trilogy. So I paid a lot of attention to those kind of details in this first episode.
So my first note that I saw was just kind of like the whole Republic space cruiser, like it's like
Hmm.
they're flying through space and then they get held by this random ship. And to me, I got like a old Republic feel on this whole setup, and just
Yeah,
and one of the
that
parallels that I saw on it is like they're like, oh, what kind of vessel is this? Oh, it's an old Jedi code from the Clone Wars, like a Jedi, blah blah. And it kind of reminded me of what you call it, when they were going to Endor and they were on the Tidarian shuttle, and the lieutenant is talking to Vader. It's like, oh, it's an old code, but it checks out.
you mean which cruiser are you talking about? Is the
The
big
very
one?
front one, yeah, the very front one, and then you have the
Y-
captain. He's
Yeah,
talking to.
that is actually a Mon Calamari ship, and it is exactly more or less it's the same one, a different one maybe, but the same model that we see Admiral Akbar in.
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
exact same setup. So yeah, we see that, and then we see the ambassador ship that the Jedi's use, that Balin in Shin is in, and it's incredible. That is like a shout out to actually both eras of the
Dude,
Jedi.
I know.
Yeah.
So
I
I think their entrance was phenomenal. Like,
mm,
what a way to start a series.
I would totally agree. I thought it was also because imagine this again, a huge prequel fan. I Phantom Menace, and it is basically the same shot of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan getting into the Trade Federation ship, and the
That's
door
right.
opens, and it's the same. It's the heads off to Filoni. And then we see Shin and Skull in the exact same shot.
Yeah, that's one thing that has been like really that's really stood out with me on the series. Like even with Andor, like for me, it was always about the shots, like how they filmed everything, the quality, just like the angles that they chose to go with, and just how they're able to tell the story through the camera. Like there's barely any speaking; it's just them walking through, and they're taking on this entire Mon Calamari uh, ship, just the two of them. It's like, and I wonder how many people are actually on that ship that they probably killed.
Yeah, that's also the scene where Balin Skull is going through so many officers, is basically that Rogue One Darth Vader scene where we see him slaughter so many officers. It's also another shout out callback to that. And I mean, it gives us with the old Jedi clearance codes, it gives us the first hint of Balin's past, and then it shows him as the fallen Jedi. But of course, his lightsaber is not completely red, but it's the off orangey hue. And then we see him slaughter a whole bunch of officers in that corridor, and it just keeps you asking questions. It is, oh, is he actually Sith? What is he doing? What are his motivations? And you see the same path Anakin, then Darth Vader walked on bit by bit.
Yeah, and because they usually, because I know Morgan Elsbeth basically just called them mercenaries, and I think they're kind of more aligned towards the Dark Jedi because you kind of see, um, you you see some parallels, like or not, you can kind of see him thinking like every move he does is calculated and for a reason. So like he's not doing it out of evilness or whatnot. He's just doing it because one, survival, two, getting paid to do it, and he doesn't kill unnecessarily, as we see later on how he finds it a shame to kill Ahsoka.
I think so too, and I believe Balin Skull's character is not that. I mean, I believe Morgan Elsbeth wants him to be just a simple mercenary, what does whatever she says, but I think, and I think we saw the um, lead to this as well, that he has a larger plan at place. I think it's not just Morgan Elsbeth using him to as muscle power or whatever intimidation, but he is also using her to get to the answers that he wants.
This whole like sequence, like this whole ship, like the whole rescue of Morgan Elsbeth, I think it's kind of cool because we didn't really get to see what was it, Moff Gideon's rescue, and I kind of imagine it'd be something similar to this. And I'm wondering if these Dark Jedi were involved in that, or if it was just like a little Imperial group that went and rescued Moff Gideon.
I actually have never thought about it that way, but since what the vessel Moff Gideon was in seemed to be much smaller, so I thought it would be these dark troopers and so on and so forth. I did not think that it would be actually other
Yeah,
parties involved.
yeah, I'm actually gonna scratch that because actually the events of Ahsoka are happening coincidentally with Mando season 3. So those two Dark Jedi would be involved here. They wouldn't be messing with anything happening in Mando's season because it's happening at the same time. Um, but let's see. What's my next medals? So I just imagine like you have this captain. He's on your ship, and he sees these people who claim to be Jedi, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and let them aboard. He's like, I just want to meet them. It's like you can already tell that's a bad idea. Like, you knew he was in the area. He's like, oh yeah, I can handle whatever. It's like 2 Jedi, whatever. Doesn't matter if they're 2 Jedi, man. They're gonna be something that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah, they are using an old Jedi vessel. That's one thing, and they have the clearance codes. That's another thing. I understand the vessel is tiny, but you don't go there with six officers.
No,
That
and
is
I'm wondering
way
if
too little.
yeah, and I'm actually wondering if Balin has had that ship ever since the Order 66, because we know that he was a Jedi at the Jedi Temple. And so I'm wondering if this is a ship that he took in order to escape from the approaching Anakin with his 501st.
Wow, that that would be amazing, but I don't think so. I think those things would have been out of commission, and I think he got it, restored it from somewhere just for this type of mission so that he could use these clearance codes. I
Yeah, I
don't
mean, I
think
guess
he
that
still
makes
has
sense.
that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if a Jedi fighter like that was flying around during the Empire, while the Empire was still alive, I'm sure they would have been handled pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he must have made all of those, especially it's an ambassador's ship or something like
Hmm.
that. It is it must be one of the first things he must have gotten rid of.
Yeah, I mean, because I know like a lot of the Republic uh, cruise ships from Clone Wars, like all those vessels were pretty much decommissioned. And as we see in Fallen Order, most of the time is they're salvaging a lot of the Jedi starships and a lot of the stuff for that in order to make more Imperial stuff and a lot of salvage. But I mean, what is seen as just basically a prison break?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really fun to watch, and then the actress who's playing Shin Hati is really giving me the creeps. I don't know if she got the trick from what I can't remember the Anthony Hopkins cannibal. She has not blinked ever since the first episode or something. She is giving me the creeps. She's a very convincing and very, I mean, violent looking villain so far.
Oh, it's a lot of her movements too. I did notice that. Like she pulls out lightsabers, like she goes in and just the way that she angles the lightsaber, the way that she angles her body, just like every movement, every stance that she has, and it's very precise and terrifying. Like if and just with her eyes, like your face, like you said, her face, like the unblinking. She just walks in and there's no blinking. It's just terrifying. If I saw her, I'd be like, see ya. I'd be terrified.
Yeah, I mean, this has also been really popular since the Wednesday TV show. Jenna Ortega also does not blink at all. So,
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, I'm not surprised that this like young actors taking up these kind of tricks from the old guard. I wouldn't be surprised,
Hmm.
but she is terrifying.
Hmm. And then we get they move into a more lighthearted scene. It's like because they're in like in a darker setting, and now we're in like this bright ruins, and we get to see the titled character Ahsoka walking up these ruins. What do you think about these ruins when you first saw them?
I thought they were some type of Jedi temple because so bright and
That's what I
yeah,
was thinking too.
yeah. I thought that was it, but no, apparently not, as we learn later. But the fact that I got to see her in live action wielding those dual lightsabers and cutting a hole through the ground exactly like she did from season 7 of the Clone Wars. It was just I was emotional. I can tell
Yeah,
you
no,
that.
I thought about that episode in season 7 as well, and then little Anakin just popped in my head. It's like, oh, try spinning. That's a good trick. And so
Yeah.
I just couldn't help but chuckle, but just like the movement was just super smooth. Loved seeing it. So we're getting to see a little bit more Ahsoka, because I know we got to see her in Mando and Book of Boba, but now we get to see more of her combat style, kind of more her like intentional movements, and dropping down into like this little ruins. So this is my question about like this whole thing. It's okay. So Rebels ends with Ezra using the Purgles to pull Thrawn and his Star Destroyer away from Lothal to save his friends. No idea where they went. Even Ezra didn't know where he was going to go. And so what I was wondering is how Morgan Elsbeth, or even how Ahsoka got it from Morgan Elsbeth, but how did Morgan Elsbeth know about this little map that happened to go straight to Thrawn? I know I was talking with one of my friends, and he was saying, because later on we found out that Morgan Elsbeth is communicating with the Night Sisters. And since we find out that this is like a Night Sister ruin, I'm assuming from what we find out later that this map was held there for a specific reason, not for Thrawn, not for Ezra or anything. It just happens to be where they went. What do you think on
Uh,
that?
I agree with you also because of the very specific phrase, a very specific phrase Morgan Elsbeth uses when I think Skull tells her that the map is gone. She says, "That's okay, the fate made it like that." So I think there is some kind of another prophecy or something that is because I mean, this is Night Sisters are all about this kind of stuff, right? So,
Because we find out Morgan Elsbeth is part of the Night Sisters.
yeah, exactly, which was an incredible reveal to me because before she said it, we actually only got a wink to us, the people who watched everything else or knew about everything else. So she
Mm-hmm.
just says that these are the the temple was built by my ancestors. And then when you actually pay attention to Ahsoka trying to find the map, you see three figures on the walls etched, and they are Night Sisters. So if you pay attention to that, and after a couple of minutes, you get the scene, and she says it's my ancestors, and then you immediately know, oh, okay, she's a Night Sister. And then she says the words Night Sisters of Dathomir, and it's incredible. So yeah, I believe it's either because yeah, I think it is because the Night Sisters are in contact somehow, of course, magic with a K,
Mm-hmm.
but there's all I mean, I just cannot wrap my head around, first of all, why were the Night Sisters there? I have a tiny bit of a theory, but also um how that specific galaxy somehow had a map that was not in any other archive or whatever, but in that temple.
I mean, they built that temple for a reason, so it had to be important to the Night Sisters.
Hmm.
And in order to throw a puzzle around it for someone to solve it, you'd have to go in there knowing how to get to it. So the Night Sisters were protecting it, and I'm sure there was probably a lot more Night Sisters there before the Empire, because I found it really sad that the Empire wiped out all the Night Sisters. Actually, even before the Rise, like Palpatine went and destroyed them,
Hmm.
and then it was just kind of sad. It was like, oh man, the Night Sisters, they're kind of cool because they don't call their magic the Force, but they said that it's in some connection to it, or it's a different type of the way the Force is used. And so I've
Hmm.
always found the Night Sisters very curious in what makes how they're able to make it so different than what we know traditionally as the Force.
Yeah, they have also necromancy of
Mm-hmm.
a certain kind, and they have, I mean, to be fair, I would love to actually know more about the culture that is built in Dathomir, because you see some part of it in Clone Wars, and you know Darth Maul comes from there, and Asajj Ventress comes from there, and then
Savage.
Savage comes from there, exactly, and it's just a very separate male female culture that is going on there that I would love to know, and how these things work, because I also believe the Night Sisters, I mean, how long do they live? Do they have a normal lifespan? Because these Night Sisters that we meet with Thrawn might actually be from that galaxy originally, and we don't even know for how long have they been there. And was this whole part of a plan for something? Because Skull also says that he's hearing a call from that planet. So I guess these things might tie together at some point.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah, it's just very interesting because I don't know, you don't play the games, do you? You're not like a gamer or anything. Have
I
you
am.
have you played Fallen Order?
No, those are on my list.
Okay, because you do get Dathomir there, and you get to explore Dathomir a little bit. One of the characters that becomes part of your crew is actually a survivor of the Night Sisters,
Wow.
and so you get to learn a little bit more about uh, their culture through her. And continuing on into Jedi Survivor, she continues to introduce you to new things, which is insane. It's really cool. So once you get there, I highly recommend it, because one of my things, especially with Jedi Survivor, I felt it had a connection to this because they're kind of exploring similar ideas of going beyond the galaxy, like the whole Outer Rim, like the unknown regions and beyond is what I feel they're trying to build up into, and because
Yeah.
they find this map to another galaxy, it's like, okay, the Jedi knew about it, but why hasn't anybody explored it?
Yeah, this is unfortunately something that I find a little difficult, because there are so many mediums to follow the Star Wars lore from, and I mean, some of them are retcons, some of them are canon, so it's sometimes really, really difficult. And also with the different timelines, you always have to, like, just like you said, you think about, oh, okay, these dark nights, were they involved in Moff Gideon's escape? But then you think, oh, okay, the timeline. So it gets very, very difficult after a while. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything on Dathomir, and of course, I mean, I'm going to play the games. I just uh played the Battlefront, and that was it. There was no story in
Okay,
there, so
I've been meaning to go back and play that story arc. I remember that one was fun.
yeah, I don't remember those games as fun at all. I just remember being killed a lot.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, so I mean, it's cool that she finds this map, and then we get to see a little bit more of her battle style going against these droids. I liked how she kept cutting holes under them, jumping up, kind of like dwindling them down to be able to get them out. So she's like, all right, well, I'm getting out of here with this map. I'm taking you out. It's too many of you, so I'm gonna be creative and start hopping down holes, cutting you down, then jumping back up, take one out, take them out one by one.
Exactly. It is one of the best things about Ahsoka. She's has so many ingenious methods and out of the box thinking, and with Mandalorian, what we've seen, like what they have given us in live action until this episode, was very straightforward. But I feel like we are getting our Ahsoka that we knew back, because we see her doing her classic Ahsoka smirk. We see her playing with her lightsabers in a way that we know, and her battling style. It's never just brute force or her force abilities, but it's so much of her is her mind and her ingenuity. It's incredible.
But I also feel there is something different about Ahsoka, and I think it's intentional. and we find out later on why. At least I think so. But because she mentions to Hera, once we see Hera in a little bit, that she's like, oh yeah, Anakin never finished my training. So she always felt incomplete with that. And so I like that we are getting a conflicted Ahsoka because she left the Jedi Order. She saw what happened to Anakin, and not to imagine after hearing Luke destroying the Death Star and turning Vader back to Anakin, and then Anakin dying, that she never. I imagine that would have some kind of effect on her because she wasn't there for it. And so I'm wondering if she's kind of like going through something because I feel like there's something off about her character until later on in the series. Because we find out that she's taken on an apprentice. Well, so watching Rebels and jumping into Ahsoka, what did you think about Sabine being a Padawan to Ahsoka?
I mean, I have to agree with Hu Yang on this one. There is a reason why there are so few Mandalorians in
Mm-hmm.
the Jedi Order, and everything Sabine has done so far in this show is just out of spite. So, like I thought about this. So Sabine and Ahsoka, when they were young, they had very similar characters. Ahsoka
Mm-hmm.
was very bullish and very snarky and this and that. I mean, her name was Snips. And Sabine was the same way. And I felt like Ahsoka actually had to grow up so quickly and so unfortunately tragically. And Sabine has been through so much, but somehow she did not grow up. She did everything that she was not supposed to do.
That's
And
right. She does still feel like kind of like a rebellious teenager.
yeah, and I do not understand why. I understand that, okay, Mandalorians, sure, very hard-headed, very
Stubborn.
stubborn, and so on, but still, like there is no reason for these type of mistakes that Sabine is doing. If she wanted space to decrypt the map, she could have had her space, but still remain safe.
And
Everything she does, yeah.
that's one of
Go
the
ahead.
things that kind of frustrates me with Sabine and Ahsoka. Like, uh, there are people that disagree with me, but I feel like their chemistry on screen is very awkward. Like, I can't buy their relationship or that they were connected other than Rebels. So, like, there's some tension there, but so awkwardly portrayed. I don't know if it's the dialogue or the actress like trying to portray that, or if it's just bad writing. But I don't know how you felt on Sabine's character at that point, because I
I
find Ahsoka's interacts well with every other character, but Sabine and Dawson and the actress that plays Sabine, I just don't feel like there's anything there. It seems very dry.
I mean, you might be right, and I might just be dreaming about this actually having a very large and traumatic background, but I actually made a couple of notes about their dialogue. So, first
Okay.
of all, their first moments where there is the governor between them, those moments are incredibly awkward, and I don't think you can do that with I think that cannot be just bad acting or bad chemistry. And the governor says, he says that Sabine should hear Ahsoka out. Makes me feel like the way they had a fallout, Ahsoka was largely at fault. So Sabine actually had to be convinced to see Ahsoka and talk to her. And then we see them inside of the ship and they catch up a little bit. And I think those are the moments that you don't feel the awkwardness at all. And then Ahsoka says that she goes wherever she's needed, and Sabine says, not always. I remember picking up a piece of dialogue somewhere in one of the episodes that Ahsoka is the reason why Sabine could not help her parents and they died. So I'm assuming during all of this apprenticeship and the training years, something happened and Sabine needed to go somewhere, needed to help someone and be there for someone, and Ahsoka didn't let her. And that led to the fallout and the to probably, possibly, loss of some family members of Sabine. I believe this is the background for their fallout and their extreme awkwardness and really stunted conversation.
Very interesting. I did not pick up any of that. So well done. So I'm gonna have to pay a little bit more attention going forth just to kind of see what you're talking about, because that would be I would love to know more of the history, because I also know Hera told Ahsoka, it's like, you're the one that walked away from her, and I know you had your reasons, and so maybe it's because of all that stubbornness. So like Ahsoka's like, okay, well, I need you to do this. You need to let go. Maybe Ahsoka's trying to teach her the Jedi way of letting go, and Sabine's just not letting go, and that's kind of where she's stuck with the Force. Like Sabine is holding on to something that's not connecting her to what she needs to be connected to. And granted, Luke did the same thing. Yoda was telling Luke, hey, you got to stay here and finish your training. And Luke's like, no, my friends are in trouble. I'm out of here. And then he went, and then Luke got his hand cut off, and then it became a traumatic experience for him. But Luke wasn't as stubborn as Sabine, because Luke eventually goes back and becomes a Jedi Knight and becomes the rebel hero that we know and love. So I really like your thoughts with Sabine, because I've been trying to figure out. I'm like, why is there so much tension between the two? It's got to be more than just Ahsoka walking away.
I think so too. And the reason that she had to walk away might be the exact same reason why she did not want to train Grogu. So if it is actually connected to Sabine and her family and her attachments, I mean, I have to admit, I love Ezra and Sabine, but the way Sabine is currently talking about or acting or reacting into things that is about Ezra looks a bit too much. So maybe Sabine got obsessed with finding him and so on and so forth, and that turned out to be because that's the thing. Anakin, too intense, too powerful, got extremely dangerous very quickly. Maybe Ahsoka somehow saw something like that be- in him, in her as well.
Let's jump back to the whole rebellious teenager thing. Like, we see the mural that we saw in Rebels, and they're doing a tribute day for the rebel heroes that helped free Lothal. And Sabine is missing from this. And I want to kind of do a quick. I don't know if you noticed, the guy that played the governor, Ryder Azadi, is the same voice actor
Yeah,
that played him in the show, which I thought was really cool.
yeah,
Clancy Brown.
me too. When I watched that part, I also thought, was that on the was that at the exact same day where Lothal was freed? Because that means Sabine is actually being asked to celebrate the day her friend disappeared
Oh
in
yeah, that
front
is
of
true.
a whole bunch of people.
That
Because
is true.
that's what I felt. Because when she went back to the comm tower, which again, it was where we met Ezra, she goes and immediately goes through her belongings and finds the hologram.
Oh,
So I
that's
think
right.
it was too much for her to celebrate. Okay, I understand the freedom for Lothal and everything, but that is also the unfortunately exact same day Ezra Bridger actually disappeared. So I can understand why it might be too much for her.
That makes a lot of sense. Because, I mean, you wouldn't want to be celebrating on the day that you lost someone. I mean, should be like a celebration of his life and his accomplishments. But at the same time, I can see the sadness that she'd have for it. I found
Yeah.
it very interesting, the two pilots that were trying to stop her. I just want to make a quick note. The E-wing fighters that they were in was actually first shown in the Dark Empire comic in 1991.
Yeah,
And
I heard
so
about that.
it's really cool that they're pulling like a lot of the old stuff into it. Just a random side note. But I do like what they're doing with Sabine to a point, but later on in the series, she kind of drives me nuts. And we'll get into that later when we get to those episodes. But her rebelliousness, they kind of go in, kind of brings in that whole cliche of, what was it? It's like, okay, we've got the map, and then the villain comes, takes the map, because the hero decides to disobey another character. And so it's interesting that they brought that into it, because by her stubbornness, it opened the doorway for failure for them. It's like, imagine if she stayed on the ship with Ahsoka, did the map, and they probably wouldn't have lost it, and they probably wouldn't be in the situation they are now.
Definitely, I agree with you on that. But also, we have this thing Hu Yang pointed out. Sabine comes from a very peculiar line of Jedi. So she is the one. I mean, just imagine that we're talking about Yoda, Dooku, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and then finally Sabine. Which one of these sounds like, yeah, I'll put down my head and I will do what my master says and I will do like everything is gonna be all right because I will listen to their experiences and take lessons from that. It's any one of the characters that we have will not have
So
these
Sabine
like
is on point with their
yeah,
their
I would assume
teacher's
so. Yeah,
mood set.
yeah.
That is actually very fair. But I do have to say, Obi-Wan was very much a by the book guy.
He is the oddity.
Yeah.
And that is why Anakin turned out to be someone like this. I
Mhm.
mean, it is the whole duel of the fates, right? If Anakin was
Yes.
raised by Qui-Gon, he was going to turn
That
out to be a
is
completely different person.
that is a huge speculation. That's one of my biggest speculations, is the difference on how that whole thing would have turned out. We wouldn't have the Empire. Maybe we would. I don't know. Never know. So what'd you think of Hera? We kind of glazed over Hera, but what'd you think of Hera?
Okay, again, many thoughts. So, I love the way her uniform looks, so identical to what she has, what her attire is from the Rebels, with a few New Republic embellishments. I really love that. And I love that she is like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, the actor, is literally, I don't know how much she studied for that, but she has the mannerisms and this flirtatious like smirks and this and that Hera did so well. Like she was I loved, especially in the first episode, her hologram scenes that I saw Hera and I loved that. It was so very nice to see for me. I was a tiny bit sad that I did not get to see Chopper in the first episode. And also, where are the rest of the rebels? Where are the rest of the Ghost crew? We
Well,
saw Zeb in
yes,
Mandalorian, but
which this is
yeah.
happening at the same time as Ahsoka. So Zeb is doing something over with on Mando's side, but I mean, we still had what's his Captain Turva. I forget his name.
Carson Teva.
Teva. Yeah, because he sees Captain Teva in Mando season 3. So maybe what? Okay. So they're saying that I just connected something. So Captain Teva is helping Ahsoka a lot, especially later on. And maybe after Captain Teva finishes with Hera, because they go back, and maybe Captain Teva is talking to Zeb about what's going on, what he just came from. So maybe a lot of this stuff is happening before Zeb even is introduced in Mando. So trying to match up timelines, but
Okay.
Zeb might get involved later because Captain Teva is like, okay, Hera and Ahsoka are onto something. We need your help because you're still involved. I'm wondering where I would love to see Agent Callus. I wonder if he's
That's
still.
exactly. That was my next point. I'm sorry to cut your
No, you're
word,
good.
but it is I mean, Callus had such an incredible arc in Rebels. We deserve to see him in live action too.
But maybe he's still with the Lasats because maybe he's working with them, and maybe he chose to stay among them because he basically wiped them out, and so he's probably trying to still make amends and stay there and repent of his evil doing or wrongdoings or what the Empire made him do. So,
Oh.
because we got Hera, we got Sabine, we got a mention of Kanan later on. They're trying to find Ezra. We got Chopper. We get to see Jason later on. And then we see Zeb in Mando. So Agent Callus would be the other one. Part of the Ghost crew.
I really wonder if
Oh,
they're
and
gonna give
Chopper's
us.
droid friend.
Yeah. I really wonder if they're gonna give us a like flashback or somehow a Force Ghost voice, whatever, of Kanan. Because I mean, Jason seems to be very Force sensitive. He's not just like any other Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he actually gets to communicate with his dad through the
I know we
Force.
got a picture of Kanan in the Ghost.
Yeah, I saw that. That is
And they actually had Freddie
amazing.
Prinze Jr. Dress up as Kanan and take the photo, which I thought was really cool.
Did they? I had no idea. Oh, that having Freddie Prinze Jr. as Kanan would be a dream come true.
Because he did the voice. I actually got to meet him, and he is one of the coolest people ever. Like, my experience with Freddie was really cool. Because my cousin, he voices Zeb. And so back in Florida Star Wars Celebration, I went to meet my cousin and Governor Price. And so my cousin pulled me back. I walked him and Governor Price around Star Wars Celebration for a bit. We went to the Celebration store, and then we started walking back to where they do all the photos and autographs. And we stopped by this bathroom, and my cousin's like, "Okay, I'm gonna use the bathroom." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And me just being the kid of today's society, it's like, "Okay, well, I'm waiting for my cousin. I'm gonna sit here and play on my phone." My cousin comes out, and I was like, I'm like, what other Rebel characters are here? I'm like, and he's like, Freddie just walked out of the bathroom. You didn't see him? I'm like, no. I'm like, I was on my phone. And so we're walking towards the signing of the green room, and Freddie happens to be in there, and I got to shake his hand, and my cousin's like, okay, we got to go do autographs, and then Freddie is like, whoa, wait. He's like, let him come talk to me for a minute. And I thought that was like the coolest thing because he's like, he knew that I was a fan, and he's like, no, come over and talk to me. And it's like one thing I love about a lot of Star Wars actors is they love their fans. Harrison Ford might, maybe not so much, but a lot of the other characters do. And because I got to meet Bodhi from Rogue One, Sam Witwer, and I got to sit next to, I forget, I got to sit next to one of the Boba Fett's before he passed. But it was such a really cool experience. So Freddie reprising his role as Kanan, would love for them to do a Force Ghost or have him voice again, like they did. That was one of the coolest things in Rise of Skywalker is we got to hear Kanan speak.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so I would love to see that again. And I'm sure they're going to do something like once we get to episode 4 and 5, where Jason's more prominent, I'll go into a little bit more of my my theories of it.
I mean, I totally, I just like this story was amazing. We have to go back to the fact that your cousin is actually voicing Zeb. Is that what you just said?
I did, yeah. I actually had him on the
Wow.
podcast. But,
That's
yeah, he actually co-hosted
unbelievable.
one of my podcasts.
Wow. I completely, I'm gobsmacked. I cannot, for the life of me, remember what I wanted to say. Um,
I do know that we were talking about Kanan speaking with Jason.
oh, thank you, great. Yeah. With the Rise of the Skywalker, the one thing that I really was not happy with was the fact that we also heard Ahsoka in that sequence, and I want to know how that happened.
Hopefully, we'll see it at some point. Hopefully, they go back and discuss it, because that'd be really cool.
Yeah, would.
So let's
What
see. I
were
love
we
the look of
talking about?
Lothal.
Have something that I put down. It is about the scene. So we were talking about Sabine and how she did not show up at the memorial celebration day, whatever it was. The crew in those, I don't know, they were not shuttles, but well, yeah, whatever. They're also called Spectre, like the Ghost's shuttle.
That's true. And
Yeah,
Ahsoka kept her Fulcrum call sign.
exactly. So that was a great hats off to those two things. So I loved seeing the ships there being called Spectre and Ahsoka being called Fulcrum. I loved that because I honestly did not think for a second when I was watching Rebels that I was going to get to see Ahsoka like that. When she
I don't think
descended
anybody did.
down, yeah, when she descended down those stairs, I lost it. It was beautiful. And I actually really love that they kept her, I don't even know what to call them, her not tentacles, but her head situation in more or less the same length as she had
Yeah, because
after
I know
Rebels.
when because I know when she was in Mando, her first appearance, that was one of the biggest complaints that people had, was how short they were.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
There,
so they went back and fixed it, or
that is
continued.
great. That was one thing. What I did not like about the Mando version was also that they did not make them move or animate with her movements.
Yeah,
So
they're
they
just kind of
look
just
like they
stiff
were
and
made
just
out of,
there.
yeah, foam or something like that. But right now they look like they are a part of her, actually. So that is a great look. All right, what else do I have? I mean,
I was gonna mention that new Inquisitor,
oh yeah, exactly. That's what I saw as well. Yeah. The
because
new
it's cool that Shin and Morgan, like they're checking the temple, and this is kind of interesting. So she's like, Morgan's like, oh no, the map is, because the droids did the whole detonation thing. They're like, oh yeah, the map is probably destroyed with the temple, and Balin's like, nah, Ahsoka's got it. And we just see that random cool looking guy just chilling with them, and it's like, okay, who's this? So he looks like an Inquisitor. He's got a lightsaber of an Inquisitor, so he's got to be an Inquisitor. And I know a lot of people had so many theories of who this character was going to be,
Yeah.
but looks pretty epic.
Yeah. Yeah. It truly does. I guess we're not going to go into what happened later on. So, yeah, all I can say is I love the lightsabers, seeing that I mean, we saw some type of it in Kenobi as well, but
Mm-hmm.
seeing it like that in live action looked pretty dope. I have to say that. Um, I have to actually say something else. Are
Okay.
you interested in Norse mythology?
I love mythology of any kind.
All right. Okay. So the names Hati and Skoll, do they mean anything to you?
They don't.
They are the names of the wolves in the Nordic mythology
Oh,
that pull the
no,
sun and the moon.
no, you are right. That does mean something to me. I have read that,
Yeah,
which makes sense
and
because Dave Filoni loves wolves. So why wouldn't he jump into Norse mythology and pull?
and the Loth wolves, we see them one dark, one light, and even
Yes,
Skull and Hati's clothes are color coded to those colors.
interesting.
So
That is a very interesting point.
I want
Because
to
later
really
on, as the
know.
characters
Yeah.
talk, like I'm very curious on where these characters are going to go. Especially in the most recent episode, we see a character shift with Shin, and I'm very curious of. I mean, Dave Filoni is very intentional with what he does. So if he's going to pull wolves, especially go with Norse mythology, he's got a reason for picking those specific two. Like, okay, like there's something that's going to happen within the next in 7 and 8 that I'm so looking forward to now. I'm gonna once the podcast is over, I'm actually gonna go look all that up and see what I can find with my theories on it.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is the thing is in the Norse mythology, Skull is the white wolf and Hati is the dark one. So
Okay.
it's like they played with that a little bit, but we'll see. Maybe later on with the motivations and so on, things might change.
100%.
Yeah. So we have the Loth wolves, two of them, one dark, one light. We see two, okay, I mean, dark Jedis, let's say.
hmm
One dark, one light with their clothing, and their names are Skull and Hati. So there is definitely something there that will probably be revealed by Filoni himself later on.
Yeah, like I said, Filoni is very intentional, so I'm very curious to see what he's gonna be doing with that. Um, I do like those two characters a lot, though. Like the way they carry themselves, like through the entire episode, every scene they're in, I think they're like the probably my two favorite characters of the series so far. Like I would love to see a movie or just a TV series on just those two, which is really sad because Ray passed away before this even aired. But he doesn't get to see the reception that he's been getting for his character, and he has done phenomenal. Like Balin is very intimidating, but in a very professional way. I don't know. Not exactly how to say it. He's got the presence that Vader carries. It's
Yeah,
like he demands respect and fear at the same time.
definitely. That was one of the things that people and I also really disliked about Kylo Ren, the crazy, furious things that he did, and Balin Skull does not have any of those things. He is very secure in what he wants and in his identity and where he
hmm
stands and everything, and it shows really, really well. It is such a shame Ray Stevenson didn't get to see that. It
And I think that was
really,
like one of the biggest
yeah,
things with Kylo Ren is because his lightsaber was unstable. It's kind of like a reflection of his personality.
that
So
that is a great observation. Yeah.
so he's so so Kylo Ren was intended to be that way until he basically found redemption within himself and became Ben Solo again. And then you could
Hmm.
see a whole mental change on that character. Uh,
Yeah.
but but I do love seeing a dark Jedi that is more in control of his emotions and not just going to react to everything the way that Kylo did. Like
Yeah.
even
This
Shin is a little bit erratic, but she's
definitely.
more controlled.
Definitely, and I would definitely, that's why I called him a Dark Jedi,
hmm
because it is very obvious that he was raised within the Jedi Order.
hmm
And I don't know what, I mean, the thing is, Ahsoka was raised in the Jedi Order and she got disillusioned because of how she was treated and everything. And the Balin, we actually don't know. He in the show it says he disappeared after the Clone Wars, but we don't know. Maybe he already had reservations, he was planning on leaving, and this and that. So his character is very stable and he is definitely not Sith. I think
No.
he is not very open. He's not emotional. He's not open to be manipulated and so on. I think he wants Shin to be that way as well. That's why he is trying to rein her in a lot. But Shin is definitely, I think, Darth Maul, Kylo Ren type of erratic villain. But the Balin Skull is definitely not that. He is a completely different kind of Jedi who just probably got disillusioned with the Order and maybe used the entire Order 66 and what happened after to disappear, do his own research, and follow his own type of understanding of what the Jedi Order or Force wielders are supposed to be.
I mean, that could be it too. I mean, the Jedi Order's gone, so he has nothing to really hold him accountable for things. So he just kind of wings it the kind of way that Kanan did. But Kanan went the Jedi route, and Balin just kind of went the mercenary route. Because they mentioned in the most recent episode about Jedi that are trained outside of the Order. So Balin is definitely considered a Jedi, dark Jedi, because he went the dark route. But Shin and Sabine, Ezra, Luke were all, what was the word that they used? They gave him a word called Boken Jedi,
Yeah.
which I thought was
Oh,
cool.
yeah, definitely. I believe, I mean, okay, I don't know if this is the actor choice, but I believe Balin would still be older than, as not Ezra, Kanan. So maybe
Oh yeah, definitely.
he was older. So because
More training.
yeah, exactly. Because when Order 66 happened, as we saw in Bad Batch, Kanan was very young.
Oh
He
yeah.
was a Padawan in the beginning of his training. So if Balin was maybe even already a Jedi Knight, and actually, you know what? When I look at the character wiki page, I can see that he was a former Jedi Knight and Jedi General in the Grand Army of the
Mm-hmm.
Republic. So he has had basically all of his training completed in the Order. That's
Yeah, because
why
even
his
Hu
demeanor is
Yang knew
different.
who he was.
Hmm.
Because Ahsoka has Hu Yang, which, by the way, want to talk about that character a little bit. He's from the Clone Wars, and
Yeah.
he's a really ancient Jedi droid that basically helped all the Jedi for at least 1,000 years make their lightsabers. So
Hmm.
he has a database of every single lightsaber in his databanks, and so it's crazy to see. He's like, oh yeah, I recognize this lightsaber. There's only one person I know that made it like this. His name's Balin Skull. This other one, no idea. So new apprentice apparently, but I thought that was really cool,
Same. When
and
I
that's
saw Hu Yang, I got really excited. I recognized him immediately. First of all, I really truly like this protagonist and droid. I cannot say the
droid.
word droid.
Droid. There you
Droid.
go.
Okay, got it.
I know it's a funny word.
I did not think I had a problem with it until now.
No,
Um,
you're fine.
I really love these pairings. I really do. And I think if Sabine was going to go down this way, rather than have Ahsoka alone, having her with Hu Yang is a great touch. And
Hmm.
to even just to give us the name of Balin Skull somehow, and the fact that he was in the Order and so on and so forth, it's really great. And I mean, I love that when Sabine says like, "Oh, Hu Yang, you're still around," and he says, "I'm still 75% original parts." It is adorable, and I think it's a very good character for Ahsoka because he is also always saying like, this is the old Jedi code, this is the standard Jedi mission protocol, and so on and so forth. So he is still the link that keeps her attached to the Jedi Order in one way or another. Because also, has she said I am no Jedi so far within this series? Because I don't remember hearing that.
No, the last time she says it is during her fight with Vader in
Yeah, right?
Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
in Mando, I think she does say I'm not a Jedi, but I think Book of Boba, I think she is coming around at that point. So I'm not
Yes.
sure. I'll have to double check on that, but I don't think she has considered her a Jedi yet for a long time.
Yeah, but the fact that she keeps a droid with her, that
Yeah,
is what basically one of the most important things. Because, yeah, as you said, he has the entire database of lightsabers in him. And that is an incredibly valuable knowledge. And I don't think I also do not believe Ahsoka does things just nilly-willy. She just has Hu Yang as a link to keep her still attached to the Jedi Order somehow.
yeah.
I mean, Hu Yang's information, Hu Yang's knowledge will be so important for the Jedi school that Luke is building. So,
I mean, that's true. So I'm wondering where Huang is later on, where he ends up. Because it'd be really sad to have him die during the sequel trilogy, or because Kylo decides to kill everything.
that is a
But
very good question. I wonder and I hope that they did not do something like that.
yeah, I don't think so. I think they're gonna keep him around. Like, I know Dave Filoni with a lot of his creations, he likes to give them an escape, like Ahsoka getting past Order 66 by
Mm.
having an episode of Anakin training her incessantly against clone troopers until she's tired. And then we got Ezra, who managed to survive later on through the Empire times and give him a way out as well, and to be able to bring him back. So, I mean, Huyang could survive. I don't see any reason why, unless he dies fighting, because we found out he can fight later, which is pretty cool. But speaking of fighting, what do you think of the fight between Shin and Sabine? Did it go the way you were expecting it to go?
Not, I mean, that's okay. So first of all, I loved the first shot that we saw of Shin in Lothal. It is basically the exact mirror shot of Darth Maul on Tatooine in Phantom Menace. And it is beautiful. I loved seeing it. After that, first thing when I saw Sabine's lightsaber, I thought, is that her lightsaber? Because Ezra's looked different. But it looked like she did not touch that lightsaber for such a long time. Like her Mandalorian helmet, it was probably gathering dust somewhere. And the way
Yeah,
she
because she's not
was,
even wearing the armor.
no, she's not. No, the way she was also attacking Shin, she didn't have any patience. She did these extreme movements and tried to actually put her brute force behind her attacks and everything. It did not make any sense to me. I believe she literally forsook all of her previous training as a Jedi Padawan and try to actually fight like a Mandalorian. The dark saber, it is different, and she wielded that for a time, and dark saber on for some reason responds to some different method, but it's not the same for a regular standard Jedi lightsaber. So I did not
I would
understand. She tried to get to the end of the fight when she did not even deserve to be there yet, and that's how she got extremely badly wounded.
I would even argue that she wasn't even fighting like a Mandalorian either, because we know that there was a Jedi Mandalorian war, and the Mandalorians were very formidable against the Jedi. And it seemed like Shin, who was barely trained, well, not barely trained, but like not trained normally, still has a lot of learning herself, struggled against Sabine, but also not that much.
I understand what you mean because it was very odd because yeah, you are right. She is supposed to be a Mandalorian who knows how to fight, and we saw that very, like, she was also in the beginning of the sequence when she was actually fighting with the droids. um, her hand-to-hand combat is great. But when there was a lightsaber involved, she lost herself completely. And she was not a Mandalorian, she was not a Jedi. But that is, now that I'm saying it out loud, might be the entire reason why Sabine is having such a hard time. Maybe she has not been able to
Identity crisis.
consolidate. Exactly. Now that I say it out loud, it makes so much sense. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
she does not know where she belongs because she also does not know anything about this whole new Mandalorian culture
I mean,
and
you
so
gotta
on and
look
so
at
forth.
Sabine's like upbringing. She was exiled from her people for creating a weapon that would destroy her people. So she, most of her life, she had been fighting with the rebellion. Now the Empire is destroyed, and her friend's been gone for 10 years. She's been, don't know how long she trained with Ahsoka, and so she's so far out of combat that maybe she is still trying to figure out where she fits without being part of the Ghost Crew, being Mandalorian or a Jedi. So there's probably like a lot of things going inside her head, causing a lot of conflict, and she just needs more guidance, or kind of like what I was saying before, like she needs to learn to let go and just kind of just be.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, she is also having this problem that her family, the Ghost Crew, is also in many different fractions in many different places, and she's keeping the old communications tower as her home base, whatever it is. And it's like, there actually, when I look at it, the only thing that reminds me of the Sabine that I know is the paintings inside that communications tower. Everything else is somehow completely lost in some other type of identity that she's trying to put herself into. So, and once she, of course, I mean, I'm sure Force also responds to that. She is not sure in who she is. She's not sure in her plans, anything. So I mean, now that I think about it, it makes a lot of sense for her to struggle in every single thing, like hand-to-hand combat or lightsaber combat or the use of force, because she has zero grounding, and she's just going with the wind and trying to be a part of whatever comes next.
I mean, even if you look back to Rebels, Sabine struggled even training with Kanan with the dark saber. Like Kanan got frustrated with her a lot. I don't know if you remember that episode.
Yeah, I do.
So her being difficult for Ahsoka makes sense on the training, because just her mindset, like, I gotta go back and see what Kanan did to her that was different, because I know Hera berated Kanan for the way he was training her versus the way he trained Ezra.
Hmm. I remember also something like Ezra and Sabine training together somehow.
They did eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just goes the whole thing is like she was. That's what happened. Like Kanan was basically talking to her and kind of like because she was stuck on her past, and Kanan was fighting her and basically fighting her to get her past out of her. Because Kanan was, I forget what he was saying, but he was talking a lot about her mistakes and things that she was holding on to. And then I just remember she falls down to her knees, starts crying, and then you get more back. That was one of the biggest moments we got for a backstory of Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering, it's kind of like the same thing here. It's like Ahsoka needs to be a lot more tougher, kind of remind her that she's more than what her past is, which now connects to me now for episode 5 and what Anakin was teaching Ahsoka. But I'll get more into that later. But I just got a little connection on that, so I'll come back to that later. But it's just very interesting just to kind of see how the parallels that we see, because we see a lot of similar shots of, like you mentioned, like Shin showing up the way Maul did. Like there's so many parallels to
Yep.
other works of Star Wars that it's really cool to see it unfold and see it redone in a more creative way.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, maybe this is just reaching, but when the last shot is us seeing Ahsoka running towards Sabine, not towards Shin, not trying to get the map and so on. Think of
That's right, yeah.
Obi-Wan. Think of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan went straight for Maul and then
Yeah,
went to
Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon. This, I think, also shows a lot in terms of Ahsoka's character and what kind of a Jedi she is. And I find sometimes a bit, how do I say this? Hypocritical? Hypocritical.
Hippocratic, yeah.
That she is saying that people should let go and people should not form these attachments and this and that when she actually, I mean, she wanted Sabine to destroy that map. She could have easily caught up to Shin, but
Yeah.
she went straight for Sabine.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, because Shin ship comes down and picks her up. And then very loud car drove by. You could hear that motor like crazy. But no, you're absolutely right. It is very interesting. I didn't notice that because, yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I'm not exactly sure what my thoughts are on that, but it's cool. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
I just also believe that Ahsoka also has a lot of identity issues going on. She doesn't know she's a Jedi or not a Jedi. How is she supposed to teach someone to
Oh,
actually be in peace with who they are?
and that's one thing that I like what they've been doing with the series so far is they're really diving into the characters. And the more that we talk about Sabine, some of the issues I had with her, I'm starting to get a better understanding, a little bit more tolerance for. So very interesting indeed.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, that's the last thing we see in terms of like Ahsoka and Sabine. We don't know what happened to Sabine because Qui-Gon got a very similar wound and he didn't survive. But of course, I mean, we assume that Sabine will. And then we see the credits and directed by Dave Filoni and a great soundtrack, which is, I really, every single time I see one of these live action shows, and I think, no, they cannot top the soundtrack. Like, it's John Williams. And then Ludwig Göransson comes and does something. And then now this guy, Kevin something, I guess.
Kevin Kiner, he did
Yeah,
Clone Wars and Rebels.
exactly. And the way he did this soundtrack it's gorgeous. It is beautiful. And the way he is putting certain instruments on top in certain scenes and pulling them down and other ones is just amazing. And then you see the credit roll with a star map, which makes you think of the world between worlds. And there are also the planets, as we think, in an ancient language, which I
Mhm.
assume to be the Sith language, but I also don't see a reason why it should be the Sith language. But yeah, I
So,
didn't research that.
but that might be explored later in the Rey movie. They might just be touching on it because it was taken from Fallen Order. It's one of the Zepho that Cal Kestis stumbles upon, a temple dedicated to him or his tomb or something.
Okay, this
So
is very interesting.
yeah, so they're really tying things in. But is there anything else from the episode that stood out to you that
Let
you'd want
me
to discuss
go
that we haven't
through my
discussed?
notes. Let me go through my notes for a second. Mhm. Yeah, the Ghost Crew we talked about. Oh, Jaikel, another character that we know that we
Oh
saw.
yeah, he was
And
the Ezra's friend in the Imperial Academy.
exactly. And he apparently became a senator for the New Republic, and he was in Lothal during the celebrations. And I think the casting was again on point.
Hmm.
It was great to see.
That's one thing that I really liked that they're doing is they're keeping everything consistent. There's characters that we knew and love, and they didn't just bring them back just to bring them back and put them on live action. They actually put them in a part that would make sense to the characters.
Yep,
So that's
exactly.
so that's one thing I'm loving about it. Is like they are doing really well with casting this season, or I mean, just on the show in general, and they're the story progression is pretty good because I'm not gonna lie, Hera looked pretty funky from the trailers, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have another Inquisitor or Grand Inquisitor look, and then I start watching the show. I'm like, okay, she's
Yeah.
she's doing really well with the character, and the look grew on me. It's like, okay, all right, I believe it now.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I thought like, okay, it's like because Mary Elizabeth Winstead, for people like
He was
us.
married to Ewan McGregor, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was so shocked to learn that. It is incredible. And when I saw her first, I saw her. And I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good because I love Hera and I I mean, she is also a great, great character when you just take her to the side. But okay, like
Hmm.
it's our point of interest right now is Ahsoka. And I thought I was just going to keep seeing her. But today, when I watched the first episode again and I watched and paid attention to her mannerisms and her stance and everything, she embodied Hera really well. Like props to her. She really learned how to act like her. The head tilt and the smirk and the position of the arms and the way she always Hera is always standing like she's ready to start running when someone says go.
Not to
And
mention, she's got a level ahead. She's always the voice of reason on the Ghost Crew, and
mhm,
even she was even given the voice of reason to Ahsoka.
yeah,
Like one of my favorite lines from this episode was Hera's like, "You walked away from her, but you may have had your reasons." And then Ahsoka responds with, "Even with good intentions, can give you the wrong consequences."
yeah, that was a great dialogue.
But yeah, I'm loving Hera. Hera, like everything you mentioned about her is like, yeah, like they really portrayed that character well.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, this is, I think, everything I put down on my end about this episode.
Very cool. Like overall, I really enjoyed this episode. It was a great start to the series, and I am so excited to get more into it and see what else they got going on.
I am also very happy that Dave Filoni chose to start this series himself with an episode that he directed. And
Hmm.
I think, I mean, he has a lot of credit in my book. He has really done so much for this entire live action universe that I really, really enjoy everything. Everything has been basically a hit for me. There were here and there some things, but I loved the universe that they built with Jon Favreau. And the fact that he gave everyone, I mean, he gave me, the prequel girl, so many shots that mirrored and made me think of the prequels. He gave the original trilogy people, let's start from like the Mon Calamari ships to the Darth Vader like corridor action and so on. There was not, I don't remember much about the sequel trilogy, but again, that is like kindling to fire. So maybe he chose to wash his hands off of that. But honestly, he gave me so much. And I think he gave the fandom so much to work with. Even if this was a great episode in my book. But even if it wasn't, I would have still walked away with so many things that I enjoyed.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, but I'm so excited to talk about the next ones and to see how this season ends and what they decide to do with it. But all right, guys, that's gonna end our discussion for episode 1. So guys, go. All right, guys, thanks for listening. We love the support from you guys and it's keeping our fire going. So as always, check the description below and check out our link tree. We have awesome collectibles from entertainmentearth.com where you can find basically any collectible you're searching for, and we have links to specific ones we have our own eyes on. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter to get daily updates and memes. Join our Discord, join our community of fans. We're always having discussions, uh, just basically Star Wars or basically just any type of discussion. So just come in and join our community. We'd love to have you. Um, yeah. So, and we have been also designing our own shirts. So link to our spring is in our link tree as well. We've worked hard to design these for you guys. And we know that you'll enjoy them as much as we do here. So tons of stuff to interact with. So that is it, guys. May the force
Be with you.
always